Welcome to Powerops Desktop, a single platform to seamlessly analyze, compare, and evaluate best practices for Power BI reports and models. To load a file in Powerops, you can add it by either using the Recent Files list or the Add a File option. The Recent Files option will show you the files that are either currently open or have been opened before in Power BI Desktop on this machine. Opening up any one of these, you'll select the file and then select the Connect option, which will then open up an instance of Power BI Desktop and open that file if it's not open already. And once the file is finished opening in Power BI Desktop, Powerops will scan the metadata for both the report and semantic model layer and then load up the summary page as you see in front of you here. Additionally, users have the option to come up to the Add File option here, which will once again load recent files over on the left as a selection option, but over on the right we have a new option to upload a file, which will give us two primary file types. Full report will allow us to upload three file formats between the traditional PBIX, a PBIP or project file, or a PBIT or template file. In addition to the full report, we also have a dataset file type, which will give us file format options to connect to a dataset folder, a traditional semantic model.bim file, or the more recently released TIMDL metadata format. Analyzing Power BI reports has never been easier. Powerops provides instant insights about both the report and the model layers, including complex report features like bookmarks, filters, dependencies, and more. Under the Summary tab, we have two primary sections for both the report and model summaries. Under the Report section, we have a series of cards here at the top that count the number of bookmarks, custom visuals, report filters, visual types, total visuals, and total pages we have in the PBIX. Each one of these in turn also will navigate to the associated section. If we clicked on Total Pages, it will take us to the Report tab and the Pages section underneath it. Coming back to the Summary section, I also want to highlight that each of these visuals will also contain a tooltip as well, giving additional information about the visual and the associated data. Plus, each one of these sections will have a download icon, which will give you an option to download either the image, the CSV, or the Excel file. Coming up to the upper right and selecting the model view, we're given a similar breakdown of the calculated columns, calculation groups, measures, data sources, total columns, and total tables that are contained within the semantic model, plus additional visuals below that give further breakdowns about model information. Coming over to the Report tab, you'll get a display of all of the details of the report level in Power BI developer-friendly formats. Starting with the Pages section, you'll get a subsection for General, which will outline all of the general information related to the page attributes that is set at the page level. And with each of these sections, you do have a default number of columns that are displayed, but you also have an option to turn on or off any of the additional detail columns for any of the attributes on the particular section that you're in. Additionally, under the Page section, you'll find a subsection that will outline all of the filter pane visual configurations in terms of formatting and design, and similarly for the Filter Cards section as well. Continuing along and coming over to the Visuals section, initially you will see a table breakdown of all of the visual types and information related to those visuals, such as the fields used, which gets a breakdown that actually indicates whether or not measures, columns, calculated tables, or hierarchies are used in that visual. Outside of the data that's being used in the visuals, you have a formatting section as well, which will give you a summary of all the formatting plus an option to show more, which will expand out to show the underlying JSON code, which displays in a formatted fashion all of the attributes for the formatting for that particular object. Closing out of this and coming over to Visual Interactions, this section will highlight both the outbound and inbound filters. Outbound means what other visuals are going to be impacted or filtered by a particular visual. So the store breakdown visual will cross-filter the category breakdown and this other custom visual card. But it also shows that those same visuals will also provide cross-filters as an inbound filter connection as well. Coming over to the general subsection, this will give a summary breakdown of all of the different objects that you have on a report page and all of their associated attributes. And last but not least, if we come up to the upper right and select the visual view, this will give you a wireframe of each page that will show all of the associated objects and visuals that have been added to a page. Plus, as a nice added bonus, you have a bookmark section, which will, per page, let you see the bookmarks and then their associated objects that they impact when you're toggling or activating said bookmark. Coming back to the top level of the Report tab, and now coming over to Custom Visuals, this will give you a breakdown of all custom visuals that are either used or unused in your report. Additionally, you also have something harvested from the app source, which will be the publisher of that custom visual, any support links, the ratings, and even additional description information on what it does, plus, when relevant, a link that takes you to the app source page. The filters section coming up here will list everything from the filters pane. So you have your visual filters, you'll have your page filters, any associated report filters if they were added to the report, and a drill through filters selection as well. The bookmark selection up here will list out every bookmark that is in the report at a summary level to start with. And additionally, if you were to come up to explore more, you'll get a detailed pane that will list out every part of the capture state of the bookmark in terms of every visual and attribute that was configured at the time of the snapshot when the bookmark was created. Moving over to the action section, this will list out every action that has been assigned to every button across any of the report pages. The sync slicers, as the name implies, will list out all the attributes of any slicers that have been synced across various pages in the report, and their additional configurations as well in terms of field or filter changes. And last but not least, the navigator menu will show you if there are any navigator buttons used, so any page navigator buttons or specifically bookmark navigator buttons. Summary of all of the information related to the particular model objects. Starting with the table section, we will get a list of all the tables plus all of their configurable attributes that are listed below. And once again, as a reminder, you can also choose which columns to show by coming over to the Show Columns option and configuring that from here. The columns section, if we come up to the upper left, will give you a list of columns, but also broken out with a navigation pane over here that will let you select the table that you want to see all of the columns associated with it contained within. Plus, also notice the icons that will represent the regular tables, any of the tables that are being used as a measures folder for the DAX calculations, or any of the DAX calculated tables as well. The hierarchies section will list any hierarchies if they've been added to the model. Any of the parameters will list any of the field parameters that we can see over on the left, or any of the numeric range parameters that were added to the model. Data groups will list any of the categorical or bin groups that were added from any particular column. Data sources will list out all of the sources and where that came from, whether or not that was from Excel, any online data source, on-prem data source, and so on. Plus, with an option to copy the connection definition if you desire. The relationship section will list out all the relationships, but also give you some additional information, such as the direction of the relationship and its type, and any of the other configurable attributes as well. If you have an incremental refresh policy added to the model, you'll find that contained under the refresh policy section here. And similarly, if there were any additional perspectives as well that were added using a tool such as Tabular Editor, you would find that contained under the perspectives section. And last but not least, we're going to come over to the model view, and this will give you a diagram similar to what you would find in Power BI, with the ability to actually move the tables around, which will move all of the relationships. And if you were to click in the middle of the relationship line, you'll also get a pop-up which will once again give you information regarding that particular relationship. Closing out of this, and last but not least, we have a properties pane, which can be opened up on the right, which will give you the same properties that were configured in Power BI Desktop and shows you what those current configurations are here. Take note that this is a display-only interface, so you cannot reconfigure these. It's just simply displaying what was configured at the time of saving this file. Next, we're going to come over to the DAX section and take a review of this. To start with, all of the measures that have been added to the model will be listed here, including what table name it is associated with if you are using any kind of a measures table. The measure names will be indicated here. Also, an expression will be over on the right with an option to copy out the raw code or any of the DAX formatted code as well. And additional information such as the format strings, and so on will all be contained over on the right. And as a reminder, all of this data can be downloaded and exported if you want to get a full list of your measures either in CSV or Excel format. Moving over now to calculated columns. Similarly, we will be given a list of calculated columns that are contained in here with the option to either copy out the formatted or unformatted expressions that was used in those formulas. The calculated tables will follow a similar structure, once again giving you the option to copy the code if needed. And the same type of table printouts would also exist if you had any calculation groups or KPIs. The next section we are going to review are the dependencies. The model dependencies view will show a combination of all of your measures, columns, calculated columns, and calculated tables, and which items are dependent on the others. You can also use any of these to filter out those items as well. Use the search box to search for a particular item. Let's use net sales as an example to filter. And in this scenario, we can now, over here on the right, see the net sales calculation, which is based off of these two columns from the model, and then everything else downstream, which is dependent upon it from all the other measures that are based on top of it. Similarly, you can right-click on any one of these and either highlight or also add a filter, which will now then show both of these, but only the dependencies related from the final calculation of WIF total profit, and then all of the dependencies that it has upstream from it all the way back to the original column sources. Coming up now to report dependencies. This will help you find the visuals and pages impacted by the changes in either measures or models, again with a legend and key that will allow you to filter to any particular item that you have in this, and these can all be moved around to also rearrange and organize to see what items are dependent on it. Once again, with also an option to be able to filter to a particular item and then see the related items from the report level and its associated dependencies. Last but not least, we also have the Power Query dependencies, which will indicate what the original source was, any of the actual source strings, and then the associated dependent queries downstream from it. Coming up to the roles section, this will give a breakdown of any role level security or object level security roles that you have assigned to the model, with an indication like most of the other sections that will give you a row level breakdown and table output to summarize all of the information regarding the expressions, what the table and references are, any of the types, and further information. And the last section within the Analyze tab is the Information section, which is information about the file type itself, which will give you a lot of information on all of the different attributes related to the model, some of the designs on what connection mode it is, what Power BI data source version was being used, any of the themes that have been assigned, as well as language, but then also as well over on the right, a summarized view of the various other attributes that can be configured from a top-level model perspective. Powerops is the best tool to compare different versions of reports and models in both tabular and visual formats. To compare two files, we'll come up to the Compare tab up here at the top, which will give us the option to compare two different items. Select to Compare will give us an option to either have a recent items in the list, as well as an option to add a file from both our recent files list, or an option to upload any of the file formats as well. We already have AdventureWorks version 1 selected in the source. In the destination, we're going to come up, select Add a File, and compare AdventureWorks Sales version 2 and select Connect. And as well, if you want to swap the order of them, you have the option in here to reverse the direction of which will be compared from and to. Let's go ahead and select Compare. And starting from this first page, let's highlight the three different ways that we can see what's been added, removed, or modified. These first two rows show that both of these pages exist in both of them and have been modified. These next four rows show that there have been 4 different pages that have been removed, and finally at the bottom, there are 2 additional pages that have been added in the version 2 of the file. And a unique feature of the Powerops app is the fact that it also breaks down even the visual configurations on any particular report page. At the top here, we can see that both copies of the file contain a map visual with the visual title of Order Quantity by Reseller Country. Previously, it had been sorted by order quantity descending, and you can see over on the right where the status has been modified, where that sort order has been removed, and vice versa for the area chart, a sort order is now being applied where it has previously not been applied in the previous version of the file. So any visual level configurations, formatting, or changes is captured by this tool. And at the top, you'll get a list of summary icons which will show you at the report level what has been modified, removed, or added. And below the report level, you have subsections for pages, visuals, custom visuals, filters, and sync slicers. There's a similar pattern followed for the data model section as well for all of the data model attributes, any of the DAX measures, any of the Power Query M queries as well, plus any of the information around the file itself, including name and other attributes. Coming over to the data model section and reviewing the tables, if we turn off Show Only Differences, for any of these sections we'll actually be given an entire list of all attributes between both files instead of just highlighting only the changed items. Additionally, many of these views will actually have an option to switch between table view or a model view as well, which will mirror what the model view looks like in Power BI Desktop, even including a properties pane which will allow you to select any of these items to see additional information about that particular attribute of the model. Closing out of this and coming over to the DAX section, as you're comparing any of these, you do have the option to be able to come over and select Copy to Clipboard or Copy Formatted to Clipboard, which will let you copy out and extract any of the measures and the logic that was written inside of the code. Plus, when hovering over the expression itself, you'll get a tooltip which will show the entire body of code for that measure. Highlighting some of the items in the M queries section, we can actually expand out any one of these queries, and when we open it up, we're given the full body of M code that has also been formatted, Plus, it highlights what lines of code have been changed within this query. Closing out of this, and similar to the DAX measures, we have two options to copy the raw code or the formatted M code as well. And last but not least, showing the info section again, with the show only differences unchecked, you can see all of the attributes that are actually listed in here, but again highlighting just the things that have been changed. Powerops automatically evaluates the best practices for both the report and model layers using industry standard best practices. This will help you to build better quality reports and models. In the overview section, you can see the total number of rules and how many of them that have failed or passed. Each one of the subsections can either be navigated to by selecting the cards below that indicates the number of passed or failed rules, or you can use the navigation banner here at the top. Let's start by exploring the report rule sets, which is something that is unique to Powerops. We can see that there are currently 9 rules being analyzed, with 4 of them having failed and 5 of them having passed. Taking a look down below, we can see that there is a rule for removing custom visuals which are not used in the report, and we can determine that there are 13 custom visuals that are in this PBIX that are not used on any report page. Similarly, we have another rule over here that is indicating that the visuals must use the theme colors and that there is a visual that is currently using a color outside of the theme. Within each of these rules as well, you'll notice an M and an L. So these indicate the severity of the rule set themselves. So L means low, M will mean medium, and if we come over, as an example, to the performance section over here, which is analyzing the actual model, we can see an H, which will represent the high severity rules, which in this case is checking to see if there is a bidirectional or many-to-many relationship that is in the model itself. Plus, when applicable, some of these rules as well will also provide reference links to articles to help explain why this rule is important. You might notice that some of these rules are actually following the Microsoft rule best practices or some of the rule sets that are part of the best practices analyzer that is included with Tabular Editor. Now, Powerops will come with a rule set out of the box, but a couple of options are available for you to customize this. If we come up to the upper right and select the gear icon, we will see that there's an option for best practice rules where the Powerops default is included in here. You can also use the Microsoft best practices rules, which also includes a link which will open up a web page for further information. But we also have an option down at the bottom for custom, where it allows you to use a GitHub link to the JSON code for the rule set, or where you can upload a JSON file itself. Let's go ahead and look at a web page for the URL that we can paste into here. Copy this out and come back to Powerops. You can paste that into here, and we'll select Apply. Notice that the number of rules has changed, and on the overview set, we've gone from a much higher set of rules to a standard core set of rules that was used from that URL, which is now being fed into Powerops. Additionally, if we come back up to this, we can, as well as including a URL, upload a file that has the JSON rule set in there as well, selecting Browse, and selecting BPA rules, and we can upload a file, and once again, let's watch the number of rules that are listed in here change after we apply this. Plus, as we're making these changes, one last thing to mention under the gear icon is the fact that we can apply this to all of the files as a rule set or to this single file only. And last but not least, clicking cancel for any of the rule sets that we have linked to, either through a URL or a file, we can come up to edit rules up in the upper right, and in here we have an option for any of these sections to be able to enable or disable the rules, but we can also change some of the attributes as well. So if we click the edit icon, we can change whether or not it's enabled, what name we'd like to give to it, also indicating the severity of it, and a description as needed with either notes or URLs that we would want to provide into there, plus also a scope of what section this rule should apply to, which can be one or more of these sections. And finally, the rule expression editor down here at the bottom, plus a validate expression option to make sure that the code has been written correctly. But overall, hopefully this video helps, and don't forget to visit powerops.app to learn more.